My husband filed for divorce, called me useless wife and left for Mistress. He thought I'd crumble. I just smiled. Then I exposed his fraud and his GF blasted him. Now he calls 20 times a day. My husband suddenly filed for divorce, saying that I was a useless wife and left me for a younger mistress. He was sure I wouldn't make it without him. I just smiled. Now he calls me 20 times a day. Yesterday, my husband, Charles, who I've been with for 15 years, just handed me divorce papers. He called me a useless wife right before telling me he was moving in with his mistress. He was so sure I'd just fall apart without him. I'm still reeling, but I really need to get this off my chest. Looking back, I should have seen it coming, the signs were definitely there. But, you know, it's hard to believe the person you've built your whole life with could change so much. Or maybe, deep down, they were always like that, and you just didn't want to face it. It all started with little things. About 8 months ago, Charles got super into fitness. He started hitting F45 every morning at 5 o'clock. He bought all new workout gear from Lululemon and was always glued to his Apple Watch, checking his stats. I was actually happy for him. We're not getting any younger, and staying healthy is important. He even got me a Peloton for Christmas, but he'd remind me every week how much it cost and how I barely used it. Then came the late nights at work. The weird texts he'd quickly hide when I walked by. And this new cologne from Sephora that he claimed was a free sample. He also started making comments about my looks, saying I should try those viral skincare products from TikTok or get Botox like everyone else. Honestly, I take care of myself just fine. I'm just not interested in dropping hundreds of dollars on fancy creams or whatever's trending on Instagram. Yesterday, I was folding laundry, and I found a receipt from Tiffany and Company in his pants pocket. We're not rich people, we shop at Target and drive a 2018 Honda. A Tiffany receipt screamed big trouble. When I checked our joint account, my heart nearly stopped. There were a bunch of withdrawals to an account I didn't recognize, and our savings had been slowly disappearing over the last 6 months. I waited until he got home, receipt in hand. I expected the usual excuses or him trying to twist things, but instead, he just laughed. He actually laughed. Then he went to his home office, came back with an envelope, and just tossed it on our coffee table. I was going to wait until the weekend, but since you're being nosy, here you go, he said, smirking like he'd just won the lottery. My lawyer says it's a generous offer, especially since you've contributed basically nothing to this marriage. I just sat there, staring at the divorce papers. He kept talking about his new girlfriend, Kimberly, saying she actually takes care of herself and has ambition. Apparently, she's some fitness influencer he met at F45. She has 50,000 followers on Instagram and is going places. Meanwhile, I'm just the wife who supported him through his early career, handled all the housework, and put my own dreams on hold because he always said his job came first. The worst part? He'd been planning this for months. He already has an apartment with her in one of those swanky complexes downtown. The Tiffany receipt? A promise ring. He actually used our joint savings to buy his mistress jewelry. Let's be real, he said. You can barely work the Netflix app without my help. You'll be calling me within a week, begging to fix things. I'm actually doing you a favor, teaching you to finally grow up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, watching him pack his suitcase with all his expensive new clothes. He took his iPad, his gaming console, and even the good coffee maker, leaving me with a cheap one. After he left, I opened my laptop and started digging through our accounts. I found out he'd been moving money around since January. I found credit card statements for restaurants and hotels I never even knew about. I even found a Venmo history that made my stomach churn. I called my sister, Margaret, and she came right over. We stayed up all night, going through papers and making lists. This morning, I called in sick to work and set up an appointment with a divorce attorney. I also froze our joint credit cards, something I actually learned was possible from a random TikTok video, which is kind of funny. It's been 24 hours. My phone shows 23 missed calls from him. The first voicemail was angry, the second was threatening. By the 10th, he was practically begging me to talk about this calmly. First update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support on my last post. I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything, but a few things have gone down that I gotta share. I've been crashing at my sister Margaret's place for the past week, actually sleeping on her couch. She's got a little one, so the guest room is packed with toys. No complaints though, it's way better than being by myself in that house right now. My first big wake-up call came when I tried to buy something for $30 on Amazon, and my card got rejected. I called the bank, and that's when everything really started to come apart. Turns out Charles had been shifting money around. Not big sums that I would have noticed. but steady transfers of $200 to $300 every couple of weeks. They were always marked with innocent sounding things like car maintenance or home repairs, really basic stuff I wouldn't think twice about. Now, looking back, I feel pretty dumb. We've had separate bank accounts since we got married. That was his idea. He said it was more sensible. But I trusted him with our joint savings. Most of my paychecks went there, building our future, he used to say. What a joke. I found out he's been taking Kimberly to all these snazzy spots. Not super pricey, but way more than what we'd usually spend. Like that new fusion restaurant downtown where appetizers cost $15 a pop. Meanwhile, he'd grumble if I spent $50 at Target on household things we actually needed. Here's the strange thing. When I was going through all our papers, it's crazy how much stuff you gather in 15 years. I found receipts from places I'd never been, little coffee shops near her apartment, movie tickets from dates I wasn't invited to. He wasn't even trying hard to hide them, he just shoved them in a drawer with all our other important papers. Margaret's been a huge help sorting through everything. She works at a bank, so she knows what to look out for. She called it classic financial abuse, even though that phrase feels a bit too much for what happened to me. I just feel stupid, like I should have seen it coming way sooner. The weirdest thing happened yesterday at Walmart. I was just grabbing some basic stuff, toothpaste, shampoo, that kind of thing. You know. I bumped into Charles's cousin, Kevin. Instead of it being all awkward, he actually helped me pick out a cheap printer to scan documents. He told me Charles had pulled similar stunts with his high school girlfriend. It would have been good to know that 15 years ago, but whatever. Charles keeps calling, though not as much as before. It's down to maybe 5 or 6 times a day now. His messages changed from angry to strangely worried. Just worried about you handling the bills. He texted yesterday, like I haven't been paying my own phone bill forever. Kimberly messaged me on Facebook, nothing crazy, just that we should talk sometime. I left her a message to read. What's there even to talk about? She knew he was married, she's not some innocent bystander in all this. I met with a divorce lawyer yesterday. Nothing fancy, I found her through a women's support group on Facebook. She seemed pretty worried about some of the money stuff, especially when I showed her how he'd been moving funds. She said we need to move quickly to stop him from hiding more of our assets. The biggest bombshell dropped when I finally logged into our old shared email account. I found confirmation emails for a credit card I had no clue about. Not some big shot card or anything, just a regular Capital One card with a $3,000 limit. But he'd been using it for months, mostly at restaurants and gas stations close to her place. I actually chuckled when I saw charges from Planet Fitness there. He'd been telling me he was hitting up that pricey F45 gym, probably to impress her. Guess his fitness influencer girlfriend wasn't raking in as much cash as he made it seem. Today, I opened my very own bank account, just a basic checking account at Chase. The lady at the bank was really great, she showed me how to use their app and all that. Turns out it's not brain surgery, despite what Charles always made it sound like. Oh, and I finally got why he always had to be in charge of the Netflix account. I found out he had a separate profile set up that he'd watch with her. Stay classy, Charles. Edit 1. Thanks for all the tips about freezing credit. Already handled it. Turns out it's pretty straightforward. Edit 2. Yep, I'm keeping records of everything. Got a folder on my phone full of screenshots. Edit 3. For those asking, no, I haven't replied to either of them. My lawyer told me to stay quiet. Edit 4. Some of you are telling me to blast Kimberly on social media. Nah, I'm not into all that drama. I just want to get through this with my self-respect. Second update. Alright, quick update because this week has been absolutely bonkers. Remember how Charles was so certain I'd crumble without him? Well, life had a different script in mind. It all kicked off when I finally snagged a job at a local company. Nothing fancy, just basic customer service work, earning $16 an hour. But get this. My new office is in the exact same building as one of Charles's biggest clients. You know, those folks he's always trying to butter up. I didn't plan any of this, honest. Just saw the job on Indeed and applied. My first day on the job, guess who I bump into in the elevator? Charles. All decked out in his fancy meeting suit. The one he totally maxed out our Nordstrom card for. With Kimberly tagging along behind him like a lost little dog. The look on his face when he saw me in my work clothes, carrying my shiny new laptop bag? Seriously, you couldn't put a price on it. Kimberly just kinda stood there, looking awkward. Probably wondering why her successful boyfriend suddenly looked like he'd seen a ghost. But hold up, this is where it gets really good. Remember how Charles always took care of our money because I was too disorganized to get it? Turns out my new manager, Thomas, actually digs how good I am with details. He asked me to help get some spreadsheets in order for the office. While I was learning Excel, big shout out to YouTube tutorials. By the way, I started using those same skills to sort through all the proof of Charles's financial mess. The best part of all this? I didn't have to pull any big dramatic moves. I just handed my divorce attorney these super neat folders filled with bank statements, credit card bills, and screenshots. She actually cracked a smile when she saw how detailed I'd been. "This is perfect," she told me. "We won't even need to bring in a fancy forensic accountant." Charles found all this out during our very first mediation meeting. He strutted in all confident, probably thinking I'd be a total wreck. Instead, he walked into a room where I had printed copies of every single shady transaction he'd pulled in the past year. Even the hotel charges near Kimberly's place that he swore were business meetings. The look on his face when the mediator started going through all that evidence? Man, that was better than any revenge I could have dreamed up. But wait, there's more. Remember that Peloton he got me for Christmas, the one he kept saying I never touched? Well, last week I finally logged into the account. And guess what I stumbled upon? Workout history showing him and Kimberly using it together, at our house, on days when I was over at my sister's. Yeah. In our house. I just casually brought this up during mediation. Slid the printed activity log right across the table. Charles actually started stammering, trying to explain that one away. The real payback came when Kimberly finally figured out Charles isn't as loaded as he made himself out to be. Turns out, she found out he's still making payments on that Tiffany promise ring. Which, side note, wasn't even from a real Tiffany store. I found the receipt, it's from one of those knockoff websites. How do I know all this? Well, Kimberly pulled a fast one. She slid into my Instagram DMs, but instead of the usual "we need to talk" drama, she sent screenshots. Loads of screenshots. Messages where Charles swore he'd buy her a car with what cash, buddy, talks about moving into some fancy apartment he clearly can't afford, and even some not so nice comments about me. Let's just say those are gonna be juicy additions to our divorce case. "I thought you should see who he really is," she wrote. I'm over being part of his lies. I didn't reply, just sent everything straight to my lawyer. Taking the high road is way better than getting into a shouting match. And the icing on the cake? Charles's mom called me yesterday. Turns out she's been keeping tabs on this whole mess, thanks to our small town's rumor mill. She apologized for letting him get away with his crap all these years, and then she dropped a bomb. Charles got canned from his job. Not because of anything I did, apparently. He'd been padding his expense reports for months. All those pricey dates with Kimberly? He was putting them on his company card. I'm not gonna lie, a part of me really wanted to put all this on Facebook, share those screenshots, and make him feel as small as he made me feel when he called me useless. But you know what? I didn't even need to. He's doing a bang-up job of wrecking his own name all by himself. Instead, I focused on making my new, cozy studio apartment feel like home. I bought some plants from Home Depot and get this, they're still alive. Figured out how to hang a television by myself. YouTube is a lifesaver. And even started learning to cook for real. Turns out I'm not completely useless in the kitchen, like Charles always claimed. The best revenge? When he made yet another new Instagram account just to message me, I didn't even feel mad. I just marked it as spam and went right back to my YouTube cooking show. Third update. Alright, third update coming at you because things have just kept getting wilder. Remember how I mentioned Charles got canned for faking his expense reports? Well, buddy, that was just the warm-up act. It all kicked off last Tuesday when I was grabbing my usual coffee at Starbucks before heading to work. I happened to overhear two people at the next table gossiping about someone who got busted for charging personal stuff to their company account. Didn't really pay it much mind until I heard Charles's name. Turns out, he hadn't just been putting those dates with Kimberly on his work card, he'd been pulling that same trick at his last 3 jobs. How do I know? Because Kimberly, of all people, started flapping her gums. And not just to me, to everyone who would listen. See, after Charles lost his job, he couldn't keep up with all the big promises he'd made to her. No more fancy dinners at Cheesecake Factory, no more shopping sprees at Lululemon, and no more weekend getaways to nearby towns. The straw that broke the camel's back? He couldn't even make the payments on that bogus Tiffany ring. Yeah, still can't believe he bought a fake. Kimberly didn't just get mad, she got organized. Remember all those expense reports Charles was faking? She had pictures. Tons of pictures. Apparently, he used to brag to her about how smart he was, showing her all his little tricks for cheating the system. She'd saved everything in her Google Photos, thinking it was pretty impressive that her boyfriend was so clever with money. Last week, she made a TikTok. Nothing dramatic. Just a story about dating a guy who turned out to be a total scammer. She didn't use names, but she dropped in quick peeks of those receipts. The video went absolutely viral in our little community. Charles's old co-workers immediately recognized the format of the expense reports. Meanwhile, I had my own small win. Remember that shared Amazon account he kept trying to sneak back into? I found out he'd been using it to buy gifts for Kimberly while we were still together. So, I did something a little petty, but super satisfying. I returned everything that was still within the return window. The money went straight back to my card since I was the original buyer. The best part? He didn't even notice until Amazon sent him those rate purchase emails. By then, all the stuff he'd bought Kimberly was back at Amazon's warehouse, and the refunds had already gone through. But here's where it really gets spicy. Yesterday, I was at Target picking up some storage bins, trying to get my new place organized, when I bumped into Charles's sister, Maria. Instead of it being all awkward, she actually gave me a hug and spilled all the tea. Charles had been borrowing money from their parents, claiming it was for investment opportunities. Turns out he was using it to keep up his fake rich guy lifestyle with Kimberly. His parents found out about this during a family dinner last weekend. How? Because Kimberly's TikTok had somehow landed on his mom's Facebook feed. Apparently, there was a huge scene at Olive Garden, of all places. Charles's dad was so furious, he actually took back the spare key to their house. Ouch. Charles's reaction to all this? Total meltdown. He started messaging everyone, trying to put out fires. He made new Instagram accounts to harass Kimberly, kept calling his old job trying to explain himself, and even showed up at his parents' house at midnight, begging them to see his side of the story. The karma train wasn't finished, though. Remember how he always insisted on managing our shared cloud storage because I was too messy? Well, I finally logged into it last week to download some old pictures. And what did I find? A folder packed with screenshots of his conversations with Kimberly from when they first started dating, including some truly choice messages about their plans for after he dumped me. I didn't even have to do anything with them. I just forwarded everything straight to my divorce attorney. She actually laughed and said, "This is making my job incredibly easy." But the absolute peak of all this craziness? Kimberly made a follow-up TikTok yesterday. This time, she showed off the fake Tiffany ring, complete with screenshots of the shady website he bought it from. That video already has 50,000 views. Charles tried to come to my workplace to talk about all this, begged me to help fix his reputation. Security didn't even let him in the building. Apparently, his little scene in the lobby is now on our office's security camera greatest hits reel. I did something a little petty yesterday. I changed all our streaming passwords one by one, and I watched his Ring camera notifications blow up as he tried to get into each account: Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, even his precious ESPN+. By the third notification, I was actually giggling. And get this, his dream car, that Tesla Model 3 he leased to impress Kimberly way out of our budget, by the way, got repossessed this morning from the parking lot of the Motel 6 where he's been staying since Kimberly kicked him out of their apartment. I watched it all go down from the Dunkin' drive-thru across the street. I didn't even plan to be there. I just stopped for coffee on my way to work. Sometimes the universe just hands you these perfect moments. Edit 1. Yes. I'm still keeping copies of absolutely everything for the divorce proceedings. Edit 2. No, I won't share Kimberly's TikTok username. This isn't about stirring up more drama. Fourth update. I wasn't really planning on writing another update, but some stuff happened lately that feels like a real solid ending to this whole story. It's been 6 months since Charles walked out, calling me his useless wife. The divorce is finally wrapped up. No big courtroom drama, just a bunch of paperwork and lawyers in a boring office. Charles looked pretty rough, wearing that same Nordstrom dress shirt he used to brag about. But now it was all wrinkled and seemed a bit tight on it. Guess his fitness influencer life with Kimberly didn't quite stick. Here's where it gets interesting. Remember all those fake expense reports he was doing? His company didn't press charges or anything super dramatic. They just kind of gave him the corporate cold shoulder, held back his last paycheck and any bonuses, blacklisted him from ever working for them again, and just moved on. Turns out big companies don't like public drama any more than they have to. Kimberly bounced on him last month. No big fireworks or viral TikTok this time. She just packed up and moved back to her parents' place in the suburbs. Apparently, life gets a lot less exciting when your boyfriend can't afford Cheesecake Factory dates anymore. She tried messaging me on Instagram to explain her side of things, but I just left her message on read. Honestly, some things don't need a neat little ending. Charles is now renting a room in a shared house clear across town. His Tesla got repossessed, no shocker there. And he's driving some beat-up Honda. Fun fact, it's the same kind of car he used to make fun of me for wanting to buy, saying it was too basic. I'm still at my customer service job, but I actually got a small raise, $5 an hour. It's not like life-changing money, but hey, it's something. I even figured out how to do my own taxes using TurboTax. Turns out it's not the complicated mystery Charles always made it out to be. I had a kind of awkward but eye-opening run-in with his mom at Target last week. She was buying storage bins in the same aisle as me. Instead of just avoiding each other, we actually chatted. She told me Charles tried to borrow money from them, but they shut him down. He needs to grow up, she said, and then she helped me pick out some cute, cheap throw pillows for my studio apartment. My apartment is finally starting to feel like home. I got some plants from Home Depot, and get this, 2 out of 3 are still alive. I've been learning to cook basic meals through HelloFresh and started hitting Planet Fitness on the weekends. Nothing fancy, just normal everyday stuff. Charles still tries to reach out through new Instagram accounts, usually when he's had a few drinks. Mostly stuff like "you'll regret this" or "you can't make it without me." I just block and delete. The funny part? I found his old password list in our shared Google Drive. Yeah. He kept it in a document literally called Passwords. I didn't mess with it or anything, I just forwarded it to his sister, Maria, so she could tell him to change everything. I met a guy named Thomas at work. Nothing serious, we just grab lunch in the break room sometimes. He's also recently divorced and totally gets why I'm not ready for anything real right now. But here's the real kicker. Last week, while I was getting coffee at Dunkin', I overheard some guys from Charles's old office talking. Turns out he's been calling and emailing, trying to get his job back, and even showed up in the lobby once. They didn't even bother calling security, they just let him stand there until he got tired and left. His new life is definitely not what he had mapped out. No more fancy gym membership, he works out at the same Planet Fitness as me now. We actually had an awkward moment in the parking lot once where we both tried to avoid each other. Kimberly's back on dating apps. And his important business contacts don't even bother returning his calls anymore. Meanwhile, I'm doing all the things he swore I couldn't. Paying bills, fixing little problems around the house, managing my own money. Nothing extraordinary, just regular adult stuff that he somehow convinced me was beyond my abilities. I found our old wedding photos while I was cleaning last weekend. That girl in those pictures, trying so hard to be what he wanted? I barely recognize her now. The most satisfying moment wasn't some big, dramatic revenge scene. It was yesterday at the bank, depositing my paycheck. Yes, I still like doing it in person. The teller was the same one who helped me open my own account 6 months ago when I was shaking and scared. She smiled and said, "You look happier." And you know what? I really, truly am. Looking back on everything that's happened, I've learned some pretty big lessons. Charles always made me feel like I was useless, that I couldn't handle anything without him, especially money or managing our life. He tried to convince me that I was disorganized and incapable. But the truth is, I was just putting my trust in someone who didn't deserve it, and letting his words define my capabilities. What I've realized is that when someone tries to tear you down, or make you feel small, it's often more about them than it is about you. Their insecurities, their need for control, their own messed up ideas. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't some big, dramatic showdown. It's quietly rebuilding your life, finding your own strength, and proving to yourself that you are more than capable. It's about finding that quiet happiness and realizing you were always enough, even if someone else couldn't see it. Karma has a funny way of working itself out, and sometimes, the universe just hands you those perfect little moments of satisfaction. So, that's my story. What do you all think? Have you ever had a moment where you realized your own strength after being underestimated? I'd love to hear your thoughts.